Hi everyone, welcome to City South Church Online. So good to have you with us. When I was getting in my late 30s, I started thinking about my health. And I got this goal of I wanted to get into running. It started off partially to do with my ego, and then it transitioned to a goal. My ego is because I had a friend, and a few of us were getting together socially at somebody's house and hanging out, and he just mentioned that he ran a 10-kilometer race. And my ego kicked in, and I looked at him, and this is all internal dialogue. I thought, if he can run a 10-kilometer race, surely I can run a 10-kilometer race. I've never really ran. I was just thought of myself as somebody that could do physical activity, and I thought I'm going to do it. And so I went online, I found a 10-kilometer race that was a few months out, signed up for it, and started training. And I realized there's more to this than just going out and jogging. Like, you have to build and train and get to that, conditioning so you could actually run nonstop for 10 kilometers. And so I had this goal that I wanted to run 10 kilometers in under an hour. And I did it. I came in just under an hour, felt good about myself. So I was talking to my wife, Evie, and she is much more diligent about staying in shape than I am. And so we were talking, and she's jogged and some of that, and we came up with the goal of, let's run a half marathon together. And so we did that. We trained for a while, and we ran a half marathon together. And it was hard. The training, we did lots of training. The half marathon was hard, but we finished it. We completed it. We felt good about ourselves. This is my late 30s, and then I got this goal. I said, before my 40th birthday, I want to run a full marathon, 42.2 kilometers. I thought, if I ran a half marathon, surely I could run a full marathon. And so I trained, and that was my goal. My goal was to do it in under 4 hours. Think about that now. 4 hours of continuous running at a decent pace to do it. And I trained for 4 months. I was actually probably the most disciplined physically in my life because I had this routine and I stuck to it for 4 months. And I trained and I trained and I trained. My only mistake is I ran in the Calgary Marathon. Not my mistake wasn't running in Calgary. My mistake is Edmonton is quite a bit flatter than Calgary, and I just didn't clue into this. And so I didn't really train for the hills that Calgary was. In the Calgary Marathon, you start downtown, you work your way out of downtown into some of the neighborhoods, and then you come back into downtown to finish. And that coming out of downtown is you are basically going for 8 kilometers at a pretty decent incline. And that's where you already probably jogged for about 10 kilometers. So you're jogging 10 kilometers, and at kilometer 10 to kilometer 18 is like incline, pretty steep incline. And I finished the marathon. Instead of 4 hours, I did about 4.5 hours. But at that time, we're talking right before the marathon, right after, if you would have said, hey, let's go for a 5 kilometer jog, I could do that in my sleep. My body was conditioned that running 5, 10 kilometers was like a stroll, no problem. I could just take off and go. We didn't have to think about it. Where when I did that 10-kilometer race, it was like effort to get up to 10 kilometers. Now I could do 10 kilometers without even thinking. I can do 5 kilometers really fast if I knew that was it. Probably the biggest mistake I made in all that marathon running. I'm going to be 44 right away, so that was 4 years ago, is I let my exercising, my running, my health slip, and I have barely trained, barely ran in the last 3.5, 4 years. If I wanted to go for a 5 kilometer jog now, it would probably kill me. I would be huffing and puffing. It would take all of my energy just to finish 5 kilometers. And yet I still remember about a week or two after that marathon, I decided I was going to go for a 5 kilometer jog, and I want to do it in the fastest time I can. So I wasn't going for like a nice jog. I was going hard for 5 kilometers, and I crushed it. My body, my lungs, my legs were just so conditioned that to go from 42 kilometers down to 5 kilometers was like piece of cake. And I just crushed it. I ran that so fast. Today, it would almost kill me probably. In some ways, I see that disappointing on myself and how I've let my physical health slip. Another part of me says, isn't that fascinating that when we train in something, how we get conditioned and it becomes easier, it becomes capable. At the beginning of this process, my running journey, if I would have said, hey, tomorrow I'm running 42 kilometers, it would have taken me about 12 hours because I probably would have walked most of it. But at the end of all that journey, doing a 10-kilometer race, a half marathon, training for 4 months to run a marathon, I was able to do it in 4.5. Not amazing, but respectable. And so this is kind of the journey of our body's conditioning. And the reality is faith is similar in a lot of ways. Of following Jesus is in a lot of ways that when we work and condition and start little steps, it builds and builds and builds that we can kind of like flex some faith muscles. The same is true as if we get to that point and then we let it deteriorate, we start to lose those faith muscles too. And so this summer we've been doing a series where we're looking at different people throughout the Old Testament and just pulling something out of their story, out of their life to share of how it looks like for us and God today. And we might think these people are thousands, some of them are 4, 5, 6,000 years ago that their story took place. But they're still real humans that had the same worries and struggles that we have. We have different technology, but wanting to be loved, wanting to succeed, nervous about power structures pushing back on us, caring for our family, they had those same feelings that we have now. And so today I want to look at someone by the name of Daniel. It's a fascinating individual. And I want to look at how he lived out his faith courageously, how he flexed his faith muscles, how he developed them and grew in his faith. And you see, we start the book in the Bible is actually called Daniel, named after him. And we're introduced to Daniel and 3 of his friends. And what's happening is Jerusalem is being under attack. King Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonians have come and they're taking siege of Jerusalem. And they have surrounded the city and they conquer it. And so in those times, what a conquering nation would do is they would do a brain drain. They would go and take all of the most smartest and best people, and they would pull them out of the nation and bring them back to their capital. And they would train them in their ways, and they would have to serve King Nebuchadnezzar's court. And it does two things. It weakens the nation that you just conquered and you're going to kind of oversee, and it strengthens you because you've got these smart people that are now being part of you. And this is what happens. Daniel's one of those people, and 3 of his friends, who we later know as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they come with Daniel, and they're part of this, and they're being trained in Nebuchadnezzar's court to serve him, to be advisors, to be, to help run the government. And so they've got to go to school for 2 years to learn the ways of the Babylonians. And they are presented with the king's court, the king's kitchen. This is what you're going to be eating. This is where you're going to be sleeping. And the problem for Daniel is a lot of this food, at that time, for fallen God as a Jewish man, it wasn't right for him to eat. It wasn't proper. And so he stepped out in faith. He kind of flexes some faith muscles we see in the first time in the story. And what he does is he goes and he asks that he not eat the food that the king's providing. Takes some guts. So in Daniel chapter 1, verse 8, it says this, "But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way." So he goes up to the guy that's kind of in charge of him and says, instead of eating all this amazing food that the king's providing, can I just have water and vegetables and fruit? And this guy's a little nervous because he says, you're going to start to look unhealthy, and then it's going to reflect on me, and I'm going to get in trouble. And Daniel says, hey, let's work something out. Let's pick a time, like 10 days. I'll eat what I want to eat. And if I'm looking worse off, then I'll eat whatever you tell me to eat. And so the deal's arranged. And sure enough, at the end of it, Daniel didn't look worse. He looked better. God honored his faithfulness and flexing those faith muscles. And he looked better. Right from the beginning, Daniel was going to stand strong in what God wanted him to do. He wasn't going to be swayed by people's opinion, what power structures were pushing him to do. He was going to stand to say, this is what God wants me to do, so this is what I'm going to do. And what happened was, through his discipline, through his faithfulness, Daniel became strong, physically and mentally. In chapter 1, verse 18 to 17 says this: At the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. So the guard took away their choice food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. Could you imagine? All these great foods, like, no, just a diet of vegetables now. It'd be like my kids would like revolt. I'm sure these people were not too impressed with Daniel at that moment. You know, going from amazing steak and lobster to all you get is broccoli now. Then verse 17 it says, to these 4 young men God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. And Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. It's because of Daniel's discipline, because of Daniel's faithfulness of wanting to focus in and follow God, he was able to hear God more clearly. Do we get a little too distracted at times? One lesson that this season of COVID we're kind of coming out of taught me is that I have a lot of distractions in my life. Media, kids' activities, going out and visiting, doing something. And then when life just got shut down, I realized maybe I don't need all that stuff. All those things happening, busy, 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 distraction, distraction, distraction. It started to cause me to think in the last year and a half of what do I really value? What do I really want to focus on? Do I care what media says? Do I care about what politicians say? Do I care about what sports personalities think? Do I care about what some celebrity might think? That might be interesting. I have opinions. Is that where I'm going to put my focus and my energies? Or should I put more energy on listening to God, what He wants? To kind of follow the example of Daniel. So it happens again, another opportunity for Daniel to flex his muscles. See, King Nebuchadnezzar, he has a dream, and he knows it's a significant dream. There's a message to this dream. It's just not some dream that he had because he ate something inappropriate the night before. But this is something where he knows this has meaning to it. So he calls all of his wise men, all of his leaders, and he says, I had a dream that I want you to interpret for me. But anybody can just kind of, hey, this is what I think it says. And I don't want that. So this is what I'm going to do. Not only do you have to interpret my dream, but you have to tell me what my dream was. And they all freak out, like, how can we do that? You're asking the impossible. How can we tell you your dream and then interpret it? No one could do that. So Nebuchadnezzar is he's a strong leader. He's a little frustrated. And he says, no one can do this. I'm going to kill you all. What good are you? And so Daniel is part of that group that's going to get killed. So he prays and he asks God for clarity. Him and his friends, the 4 of them, they gather together. What is this dream, God? And God reveals it to him. So he goes before Nebuchadnezzar and he tells Nebuchadnezzar's dream and he interprets it. And here's the fascinating thing. Here's an opportunity to get a lot of glory. Not only did you save all these people, but you look pretty good. You did the impossible. But Daniel doesn't take any of the credit. He gives it all to God. He had stepped out in faith. Did it first with food, which seems not so significant. Now he's saving his life, his 3 friends' lives. And everybody else they work with, all their lives, he's saving. He was stepping out, taking a huge risk. But he'd listened to God. Felt like this is what God said to say. They stepped out in faith and flexed those faith muscles. And God honored it. It was right. And so because of that, two things happened. Daniel was elevated in his position. King Nebuchadnezzar was thrilled with him and elevated in his position. But also this king and other rulers, they started to proclaim God. Listen to this. It is Daniel chapter 2, verse 47. The king said to Daniel, "Surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries. You were able to reveal this mystery." Here is Nebuchadnezzar proclaiming that God is the God of gods. Because of Daniel stepping out of faith, it had not only an impact on the nation and the people in Daniel's life, but it had a personal impact on this king. He's flexing these faith muscles. So the story in the book of Daniel, it focuses on his three friends and a furnace, and you might be familiar with that story, but I want to stick to the person of Daniel, and it comes back to him in chapter 6. Some of the other leaders in the nation, they're getting jealous of Daniel and his position and his relationship with King Nebuchadnezzar. For them, power wins the day. And so what do you do with a threat? You get it removed. So they slipped in this sneaky law that you should only bow and kneel to the king, King Nebuchadnezzar. So to King Nebuchadnezzar sounds like a good law. And if you don't do this, you get thrown into the den of lions. It's lions that would have been not fed very much, and it would have been a form of punishment that you'd throw people in there. So they'd be hungry lions. There'd be live meat thrown in the form of a human. So you see the progression? First it comes to what you eat. Then it comes to coming before the king, life on the line. Now it comes, do I kneel and pray to God and risk being thrown in the lion's den? Or do I not? Where was Daniel's faith lying? In his cunningness to slip out of this trap, or his faithfulness to follow God? And he did what we'd expect. He knelt and he prayed. He was caught in the trap. King Nebuchadnezzar didn't want to do it, but he had to. He had to obey his laws. And Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. The scripture says the next morning King Nebuchadnezzar ran and had it opened up, hoping that Daniel was alive. And sure enough, he was. What does Daniel say? God, his angel, closed the mouth of the lions. Giving credit to God again, not to himself. It's not bringing attention to himself, it's bringing attention to God. This is what we see in the life of Daniel. It's just like, I tried running 10 kilometers, then a half marathon, then a full marathon, and building up those muscles of endurance and running. And I never would have been able to got to the full marathon right away. I needed the 10 kilometer and the half marathon. Daniel, see, it built up his faith muscles, his endurance and faith. It was something that kind of built, and he got stronger and stronger. And this isn't the story of Daniel, but just like me, stop running, it now has become difficult. It would be impossible for me to run a marathon today. I think it's the same with our faith. If we just drop off, those muscles will get unused and it'll become difficult again. So I want to challenge you with two things. What is God presenting in front of you that you can flex some faith muscles? It could be as simple as like feeling a little nudging to talk to somebody in your life, neighbor, colleague, family member. Or it could be a bit bigger where you're feeling like you should sacrificially give to something or someone, or you should do something that people would be like, what? Why are you doing that? That seems so out of character. But you feel that that's what God is saying to you to do. So I want to encourage you, flex those faith muscles. I think God is constantly presenting us with opportunities to flex our faith muscles like Daniel did. But the important thing that Daniel shows us, the second thing is we got to be listening to God to be able to hear those opportunities. And so I want to encourage you to, maybe it's time that you need to park a few of the distractions in your life so you can focus in on listening to God. Do you spend time communing with God? Do you talk to Him, listen to Him, get into His Word? And then the third thing is we see the importance of Daniel. It wasn't by himself. He had his friends around him, and they prayed together, and I'm sure they encouraged each other. The importance of community, having other people that are following God, that are encouraging you, challenging you. I can't understate the importance of having people with you and in your community. And so, are you listening to God and stepping out, flexing those faith muscles? Are you removing some distractions so that you can hear God well? And you have people around you that can encourage you and challenge you? I want to thank you so much for joining us. If you go to our website, citysouthchurch.com, and click the calendar, you can see the calendar tab at the top. You can see everything that's happening this summer for kids, for youth, for us as adults. And hope to have you either in person or online back next Sunday. So thank you so much.